Hi, this is Greg Corombos. Merry Christmas from the Three Martini Lunch. As Jim Garrity spends time with his family today and I spend time with mine, we also want to share this special day with you. You listening to the Three Martini Lunch is a huge gift to us. So while we're away, we thought it was appropriate to celebrate the greatest Christmas movie of all time and talk politics. So today, we look back at our September conversation with actor and director Robert Davi. We discuss his role in the movie Reagan, what it's been like for him over the years as a conservative in Hollywood, and, of course, his role in Die Hard.
Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Corombos of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. And today it's another of those very rare episodes where we actually have a guest with us on the podcast. And today we're very happy to be joined by accomplished actor and singer Robert Davi. Jim and I know him best, of course, as Special Agent Johnson from Die Hard. No, the other one. Some of his other many memorable roles include Jake Fratelli in The Goonies, Franz Sanchez in the James Bond film License to Kill, and most recently, he portrays the late Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev in the new film Reagan. So we'll be talking about the movie, what it's like to be a conservative in Hollywood, and of course, given our love of Die Hard, we'll spend some time on that one too. So Robert, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be here, but I have to tell you, I'm glad you mentioned the Bond film because, of course, it's shaken, not stirred. And
the Martini.
And this is the Martini. And also, my first film I did with Sinatra. Now, do you know the difference between the Vespa Martini and the Sinatra Martini? Which is the Vespa is the one that James Bond does, shaken not stirred, and the Sinatra Martini was something else. The shaken not stirred from James Bond Martini is 3 parts Gordon's, 1 part gin, and then a splash of Kino Levitt, which gives a little sweetness, and then, of course, the lemon twist. The Sinatra one is vermouth and vodka. So there's a difference.
Strong stuff.
Of those.
Yes, harder stuff, for sure.
Yeah, hard stuff. Sure. And I expected you guys to have, I had envisioned both of you with a martini glass. I said, should I wear a tuxedo? Should we come on and have a tuxie?
No. Much to the disappointment of our listeners, we do the show sober almost every time. Almost.
That's probably a good thing.
When it comes to the Reagan movie, did the producers come to you about the Brezhnev role? Did you hear about the project and say, I'd love to be part of this, and Brezhnev is a guy that intrigues me? How did that all come together?
Well, the first announcement that I came on board was in 2015 in Hollywood Reporter, and they had said the producer had asked me to play Brezhnev, and I just assumed, okay, that sounds fun, because I like playing out of the wheel, different characters. So that was how that came about, that I was Brezhnev. And then I started my research on Leonid Brezhnev, the Russian Soviet leader, of course. And I did extensive research on him. Look, the film is called Reagan, but in my mind, it was about Brezhnev. So I have to play the character like it's a film about him, even though most of the stuff, or most of the research, which was interesting about Brezhnev and fascinating to me, was stunning because Brezhnev and Nixon were good friends. Nixon actually gave Brezhnev a Lincoln Continental and then took him for a ride in it to the chagrin of the Secret Service. So I'm researching Brezhnev, and I'm looking at the speech that Brezhnev and Nixon did together at San Clemente. And I knew at that time that Reagan was governor of California. So I said to myself, perhaps they met, because that would make a lot of sense to me. Lo and behold, at the very end, the last 7-8 seconds of the clip, the first person that goes up to Brezhnev after this speech with Nixon is Ronnie and Nancy Reagan. And I says, aha. Oh. So this is early 70s, right? Because Brezhnev did not underestimate Reagan. He wanted glasnost. Most people don't know this. He wanted détente. He was writing letters. He didn't have a partner in Jimmy Carter, was the problem. And then when Reagan got in office, Brezhnev was taking pills and he was a bit out of it. And so I found and there was also assassination attempt on Brezhnev in 1968, much like Reagan. So I said all this to the writers and the producers, and of course, it's just stories I can tell, unfortunately. But it's packed into the history of my little appearance as Brezhnev.
for not being in a lot of scenes, your presence is definitely, a very compelling screen presence, a lot of nonverbal communication. Brezhnev does a lot of glowering. A lot of things are done with your stares. And thinking about over the course of your career, often playing the heavy, often playing either the villain or an antagonist role like Johnson or something. Did you feel like this was like really in your wheelhouse to play someone who wasn't going to have a lot of lines of dialogue, but had to say a lot with those few lines of dialogue and with a lot of like facial expressions and his demeanor in those meetings of Soviet leaders and things like that?
Yes. Well, again, like I said, when I had researched it, I realized I understood Brezhnev was taking pills at the time. He was in pain. He had gotten an accident in one of the wars and had suffered some pain and also some emotional pain from a couple of love affairs that had gone awry. So he was a bit sedated at those later years, which I tried to bring to those moments. Because one person said, well, what was he? No, he wasn't always so sedated, but that period of his life that I had to play was that way. And, look, the script is in the eyes. And the perfect film probably has no dialogue. So it was fun.
So you committed to this project early on,
Yes.
9 years ago.
Yeah.
What was it about Reagan, or maybe it was the Brezhnev character, but telling this story
Reagan,
that appealed
of course.
to you so much?
Of course, I'm a known conservative. I actually I know the National Review is a terrific publication, but I've written for Breitbart when the National Review wasn't really Trump supporters, and I used to berate them a little bit. I'm sorry for it, Jim.
It's a free country, Mr. Davi.
Yes.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Absolutely.
And even if you denounced us, say, every day of the week and twice on Sundays, I'd still be a fan on this end.
Me too. And I'm pleased to be on here. So I was pleased to see. Really, they'll have me on. That's fantastic. And it was Reagan, of course. Reagan was. I lived through that era. I got a few more decades than you young guys, and I lived through Reagan from the 50s to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and so it was. He's an iconic figure for America and for the world. So of course I wanted to see a film done about the Gipper, and so that was the first thing that, of course, attracted me. Reagan in 1946, which I think should be told to people because they need to hear this story. There was a woman in Hollywood called Ida Lupino. You don't know that name. But if I said Meryl Streep, you would know that name. Ida Lupino was she was an actress director of the time. There was a meeting of the Communist Party to all the elites of Hollywood, the George Clooney's of the day, those people, Jennifer Aniston's of the day, at Ida Lupino's house in 1946, and an actor called William Holden. Did you ever see the movie called Network?
Oh, yeah.
William Holden was in that film, but he was a great actor. He was very close friends with Ronald Reagan. And he brought Ronald...
man, I think.
He told Ronald Reagan about this meeting and brought it to him. Reagan wanted to speak to the Hollywood community because the communists had infiltrated a certain union, and he wanted to tell them what was really going on, and they shouted him down, wouldn't let him speak, until one actor stood up on a chair and said, we should listen to what he has to say. He has a right to speak. They took that actor and berated him for about an hour, while Reagan did speak to the jeering and ridicule of his audience, his Hollywood audience. And years later, as it says in the film, but it actually came from this moment, because Sterling Hayden was there. Sterling Hayden was the police captain in The Godfather, who punches Al Pacino. And he then, years later, said that Reagan was a one-man wrecking crew of the Communist Party in Hollywood. And that's in our film, that quote. But the thing that Reagan disarmed and educated a lot of the Hollywood elite. Olivia de Havilland was there. James Roosevelt, who was Roosevelt's son, was on the side of Reagan in terms of understanding what was happening there, oddly enough. The actor that stood on the chair and said he should speak is an actor called John Garfield. If I said to you, Leo DiCaprio, Garfield was that guy of that day, that era. He paved the way for Brando and Monty Clift and a lot of other actors leading up to today. So that was very interesting about Reagan fighting communism since the 40s. And he was a bleeding heart liberal. Now, today's Hollywood is totally different. which is a different segment.
We should point out that in addition to portraying Leonid Brezhnev, as I was saying for the credits, because I knew there was something after the credits, I was noticing during the soundtrack that you sing several of the songs that are on the soundtrack in this film. I think related to Nancy Reagan, the inaugural ball song, and all this stuff. So you're not just on screen; you're on there vocally as well, which is very important.
Yeah, and how fitting, because I did my first film with Sinatra, and Sinatra sang at the inaugurations. He sang that song that I sing in the film, just a snippet of it, of course, to Nancy Reagan. And, it's how weird to have that kind of full circle connection to things on that level, But yeah.
Definitely.
As Bob Dylan does a song in the film, and Gene Simmons and Clint Black and several other terrific people.
I remember some Hollywood producer talking about, I think it was some movie or TV show that, overcome a whole bunch of odds and turned into a hit. And he said, it's like it wanted to be made. And when you describe things like that, I kind of wonder if, this film wanted to be made, no matter how many obstacles it was going to hit.
Well, it's so relevant to today. I mean, think about the because they ridiculed, you guys won't remember this, they ridiculed Reagan as much as they're doing Trump. Maybe not on some other levels.
The left, but nuclear cowboy,
No, there was Star Wars defense.
Amiable dunce,
Star Wars,
I mean, the whole thing. I mean, Bonzo went Bonzo. You know what I mean? Gonzo went Bonzo.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there were so many different layers of that kind of misrepresenting who he was, and what was happening in the country. And you have today that film echoing it. And a lot of people that have been seeing it have been texting me, "Oh my gosh, they love the film. They're tearing up on it." The critics, of course, represent the media, and the media is a corrupt machine for the most part. And you can see that reflected in the reviews of Reagan. Now, for them to give the kind of reviews that it is given echoes how the public likes it, like a 98% score, as opposed to, 17% of the media. So,
big discrepancy.
As we all know that pay attention to this and not just eat the food they feed the sheep, we reject some of the food and go, that doesn't smell right to me. Most people don't understand how to smell something, so they just fed it and just gobbled it down, unfortunately. And Reagan's era, and I understood it because, like I said, I was at the tail end of all of that when I came to Hollywood in 1977 with Sinatra. There were conservatives in the 80s that spoke out, that were big-name conservatives. Today, it's so imbalanced. The voices have been muted, and I've written about it many times over a decade ago on Breitbart in terms of how that's being stifled in Hollywood, and people are afraid to speak out because of the ramifications, which is another segment, I think. I love the sound of ice cubes in the morning.
There you go. There's your second martini, delivered fresh as always. And so one of the things you're well known for now, of course, is being an outspoken voice on the right in Hollywood. We want to talk about that for a few minutes. So Jim, lead us off.
I was going to say, you probably rank among the most outspoken conservatives in Hollywood. And I think one of the things that the rest of the country learned of the Harvey Weinstein scandal was that casting decisions can be completely arbitrary. And you never know when somebody's decided, I'm not hiring that person no matter what. Do you find yourself not getting parts that you feel like you could have or should have and start wondering if that was politics? Or are you kind of at a point where you're like, if it happens, it happens. I don't worry about it. Have people said to you, we'd love to have you in this part. You're perfect for it. But, well, you're a conservative, or you're a Republican, or you're a Trump supporter. We can't have that sort of thing. Has it played an issue in your career, over the years? Or?
Well, it first started, I did a TV series where I played a good guy for 4 years on NBC, a show called Profiler, where I was the head of the... Okay. I created Profiling. Bailey Malone was a loved figure by many people. It was on a Saturday night, and we did 88 hours, 88 episodes. And the producers, who were terrific people and were friends at the time, invited me to an Al Gore fundraiser. And I said, but I'm voting for Bush. And they went, oh. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I was then never hired by NBC again. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's in 2000. Now, usually when you have a show that's successful, you have a TV queue that's going on, and they want to put you in something else, and look, not for anything, but for 4 years in a row, on the internet at least, I was number one and Clooney was 23 on The Sexiest Man Alive. That was just from the fans. That's just from the, you know what I mean? Not to say anything about it. It's so stupid to even say. I created some content that I wasn't able to get out there. I know for a fact agents won't represent you. I know for a fact that they will call for availability on something and say we're going to make an offer, and then it's pulled. And what happened, and I know for a fact that in 2016, I was approached and they says, if you denounce Trump now, you can write your ticket.
Wow.
Okay, because I was quite effective. I had a radio show on 300 channels. I was writing, the day he announced on Breitbart, I said he was going to win and why. The great Trump announced in 2015. And I subsequently wrote articles defending him when everyone was writing him off at that time and why. So I wrote a plethora of different things that went unheeded. It's like when Obama renamed Mount McKinley. I said, this is the most important thing, and no one's doing anything about it. You have a GOP giant figure who was against slavery, who opened Alaska, the gold standard. We had a tremendous economy, and they honor him by giving him the highest peak in North America, Mount McKinley, and Obama comes along and says, we're going to rename it. I said, this will be the beginning of statues of JFK and Lincoln and everybody else being taken down. This was written in 2012 or 2013, whatever it was. Interesting.
So you also have the movie out on Amazon now called Bardayov, which is the story that you star in. It's of a Jewish leader who saves people from being sent to Auschwitz during World War II. So people can see that now. You also have a new song that was just released last week called The House I Live In. People can check that out at your Twitter link. It's your pinned tweet, or X post, I guess it's now called. But you're also known quite recently for directing My Son Hunter, the story of Hunter Biden, his legal and moral failings, his relationship with his father. And so now as you watch him get convicted on gun charges, plead guilty to the tax charges, his father's now just got months left in office, if that, depending on whether they let him stay until January 20th. But what do you make now of what's happened with Hunter Biden? Is this what you expected or not?
Well, let me tell you something, Greg. When I started on the project, the New York Times and everyone refused that there was a laptop. Those 51 intel guys that all of a sudden they're worried about disinformation, these phony bastards. And I point the finger to the guy that made that announcement, Merrick Garland. Well, what happened? 51 signatures that tilted an election, that made everybody feel this, that. How about retroactive nonsense? Anyway, there was no laptop. There's no laptop. We do the film, and then all of a sudden, okay, there is a laptop. And everything that's in that film, it's quite entertaining. I fashioned it like the Wolf of Wall Street. I wanted to have a satirical aspect to this. I did not demonize the drug addiction because every family has had someone. I've had family members that have been addicted and have gone to rehab and had tremendous trouble with it. I had a son, a daughter, an ex-wife that had, I went to all those meetings to learn about addiction. So but what the problem is how the father used that weakness in the boy to be the smartest man I know. And, so the film it's entertaining. Breitbart put it out, but it didn't get picked up by Netflix, and it's good. All the reviewers on the left were saying, none of this happened. There is no laptop. Meanwhile, we had tremendous reviews. Some people like the Epoch Times call it a masterpiece, and other reviewers on that. I don't know if have you guys seen it?
I have not seen it, but I do remember reading a review that was like surprisingly positive and observing. I guess they'd expected a hatchet job and found it to be almost like peeling an onion, of trying to get at, whatever you think of Hunter Biden, he seems like a really troubled guy, and in any given circumstance seems to do that which is most self-destructive and worse for his dad, and creates as much, And so what makes a guy like that tick? What makes a guy like do that? And they praised the film for being a much more I don't know if sympathetic, but like...
Yeah, it was. I wanted.
yeah,
I felt for his pain, losing the mother, losing the brother, the sister. I mean, the things he went through over the time. That has to formulate someone if you're not sensitive to that. So I didn't want to do because. But what's atrocious is the way the father manipulated, and then how he deals with the Chinese. I mean, the whole 9 yards. I wish you guys would see it.
Where can all of our listeners find it?
I think if they go to mysonhuntermovie.com, they can find it for free. mysonhuntermovie.com.
So, as far as I'm concerned, Western civilization is built upon 4 pillars. The first is the Bible. Second is the Constitution. Third is the Declaration of Independence. And the fourth is the film Die Hard. I really believe it belongs up there. Greg and I started out doing this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it really is just an exceptional, not just action movie, but there's something that makes us... It came out in 88. People still watch it every Christmas. We still dissect it and talk about the moments and the performances and all that stuff. So, first of all, thank you for your work in one of our all-time favorite movies. Why do you think... that movie, there are a lot of great action movies that come out there, but something about that just really strikes a chord and people remember. What is your thoughts on why Die Hard is so beloved even, a generation later?
2 things I have to bring up, or a couple of things. First off, the initial person that was supposed to play that was Sinatra, as you know.
Yes. Because
he was tied to the previous book that the writer had done. Secondly, at the time, Bruce Willis had a bomb. Every film he did was a bomb. So when Joel Silver had produced that, who I did Predator 2 for and something else for and a couple of things, and he says, hey, I got something for you I think you're going to really like. And I said, yeah. And I kick myself now because I had gotten the Bond film and I was going to be the next Bond villain and I'm going to do a little cameo in this movie, Die Hard. So I had an inflated ego at that time. I still probably do, but it's I don't. But it's funny. Anyway, John McTiernan had a buzz about him. He did a film with Pierce Brosnan called Nomads that everyone was raving about. So I knew he was going to be a good director. Was hoping to be, and he offered me that part. And I said, but I want to do it with no billing. I said, no billing. He says, no billing. I said, no billing. And then when the film finished, he called me up. He says, you've got to take billing. I said, well, you could put my name at the end if you want, for residuals. I kicked myself for not putting my name up front, number one, with the other guys, That was my stupidity. If I could retroactive go back to that moment, it's the dumbest move I've ever made. And we do the film, and it's a fun shoot. Who knew? I had no expectation. Now, we have the first screening of the film that I saw it. I did a film called Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold and I became very close friends from that. I mean, really very close. We had drifted, but then we were close for about 12 years. Yeah, come on, we're going to go see this new movie, Die Hard. I know you have a part in it here. Joel told me they're screening it at Fox. Let's go see it tonight. I says, all right, let's go. So we're seeing the film with Arnold. And I'm sitting in the theater, and Arnold's like this, enjoying the film. I'm looking at the film, and there's gangbusters. My God, look at this. Now I come on screen, and Arnold goes, oh, this is fantastic. You look great here, with a great entrance. This is great character.
I just want to point out for those listening to the audio version, Arnold Schwarzenegger has not stepped into the studio. This is Robert Davi doing as flawless an Arnold impression as I ever heard. And I thought I was pretty good at it, but I think he has the better one. I'm sorry. Did not mean to interrupt.
So he goes, fantastic, this is great. And I'm looking at it, and I go, yeah, this was a good, entrance, who's not anymore. And now he's watching this film like this, and it's like I'm a new leading man, and I'm probably going to come in and save the day, you think, if you don't know the script.
Yeah.
I know the script, so I'm kind of like, oh, good. And then what happens is, as the FBI, as my character becomes more of a whatever he became, Arnold goes, he's like this.
For those getting the audio version, there's a look of increasing confusion. There's going from enjoyment to, wait, what the heck is happening?
And then
Why?
And then he goes, What are you doing, you idiot? What happened here? Why did you turn him into a jerk? He's a jerk now. You're an idiot for doing this. And I had to say to him, I says, Arnold, it's not me. It was the script. It was the script. Because you idiot. Yeah. And that was the first time I saw Die Hard. And then it became this classic film. You know, I was lucky to have done the Die Hard thing and worked with McTiernan and Joel Silver. And also have another film like that called Goonies, which I was supposed to do Rambo Part 2 with Sly. And I had gotten the Goonies, and the agent pulled me out of the Rambo film to do the Goonies. That's another long story. That's another martini later on. But Goonies is also a film. But Dick Donner said from the beginning, he said, this film is going to be like the new Wizard of Oz. So going into Goonies, we thought it was going to be a hit. Die Hard, I had no idea it was going to be such a monumental hit. And we did a screening in London about 2 years ago. Me and McTiernan were invited to London. I sang about 6 songs for them, ending with "Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow." And yes, it's a Christmas movie. And 2,000 people stood up and cheered. You know what I mean? And I did that just so you know, because I resisted it a little bit. Catholic, and you know, Wonderful Life has a Christmas movie. You know, it has to be Christ-centric in my head. All right, so Christmas movie. So I go, all right, now I see the love for it. So I put on X. Yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It got over 1 million retweets and things like that. And plus I said at the time I did that concert there, I says, I want to tell you, at first I didn't think it was a Christmas movie, but it absolutely is. And my children thank you. Because every year the residuals. So that was funny.
That's fantastic.
It was fantastic. I know. Yeah, it's great.
It's fantastic. Yeah, that's his favorite. That's his favorite word.
Yeah,
so I believe every
in California here.
Okay, so if there were a real crisis, who would you trust more? Special Agent Johnson and his partner, Agent Johnson, or the current FBI?
You know, I went to Quantico and I trained with a lot of those guys when I did Profiler, and I would have to say Bailey Malone, the character I played in Profiler.
There you go. That's a good
choice.
It's a good
As
way
a
to
matter of
slip
fact, when
out
I
of
went
that
to Quantico, you'll like this story, the two of you. So I'm Jim Greenleaf, who was the number 3 guy in the FBI and who also was with CIA under Webster, really high up in law enforcement and stuff. He brought me there because I put him on. When we did the show, they didn't have a technical advisor, so I knew him through George Englund, my good friend who ran Brando's company and Paul Newman's company and produced and directed The Ugly American, that film. And I'm taking classes, and I'm in Hogan's Alley, and I'm shooting, and I'm walking through the halls with Jim and one of the head guy for Quantico. And all of a sudden, about 6, 7 male, female, come up to me and they go, "Lose the grid or lose your job." I go, "Huh? Lose the grid or lose your job." They go, "Die Hard." I says, "Oh, yes." They go, "That's why we're here. You made us want to become FBI agents."
Wow. So just as Top Gun was the most successful U.S. Navy recruitment film of all time, Die Hard may well, despite the unfortunate endings of Agents Johnson and Johnson, which I always wondered was some sort of like Band-Aid reference or something like that, that like you inspired people who wanted to become FBI.
Right from the horse, these young FBI. And then when Die Hard 2 came along and Rennie Harlan was directing it, Joel called me into the office and said to Rennie, "Let's put him in 2, because I had made such an impact." I'm the unluckiest guy when it comes to sequels. All they had to say was, all right, isn't there a way around it? Maybe I jumped out, parachuted out. You know, just before the thing blew up. You could do anything.
Show up in a cast or something.
Show up in a cast.
I guess all those recruits at Quantico really listened to Deputy Chief Dwayne Robinson when he said, "I guess we need some more FBI guys." So they actually showed up.
This is Agent Johnson's twin brother,
right.
Also Agent Johnson. Yeah,
Agent Johnson, just like Saigon, hey Slick.
Mr. Davi, unfortunately, we're out of time. I hate to call it here, but it's been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And I just want to mention again that if folks haven't seen Reagan, go see it in the theater while you still can. I know they don't stay in the theater as long as they used to. Bardioff is available right now on Amazon Prime. Mr. Davi, again, a great conversation. Thank you very much for your time today.
And thank you, gentlemen, both of you. Nice to meet you, Jim, fan of yours, and you, Greg. Thank you.
Well, Jim, that was awesome. Talking to Agent Johnson himself, Leonid Brezhnev, Bond villain. I mean, the Schwarzenegger story from his first screening of Die Hard is an instant classic as far as I'm concerned on our podcast.
You talk about things I've wanted to do in life. A dueling Arnold discussion with Robert Davi is right up there. No. First of all, it takes guts and courage to be an outspoken conservative in Hollywood. A lot of folks do that and they sort of disappear. Robert Davi has not disappeared. I was reminded, I had forgotten about Profiler. I had forgotten, you mentioned Goonies. There are all kinds of great, maybe not front and center starring roles, but, he's one of the all-time classic, oh, it's that guy actors, very recognizable face and voice and screen presence, often the bad guy, not always, but he's always whenever he appears on screen, this is a character who is not to be messed with and not to be taken lightly. And as much as he projects that on screen, as you saw, as our listeners got to hear, off screen, just the funniest, fun, entertaining guy you could ever want to chat with. And I'm so glad we had a chance to do it. In fact, of all the guests we've had, this is the one where people are going to say, how have you not had this guy on before? What took so long?
That's right. Now we're going to be scouring other characters from Die Hard and the actors who are still...
Reginald Johnson, what are your thoughts on the Electoral College?
That's exactly right. And I didn't know until today that he had to give up Rambo to do Goonies.
Yeah.
My guess is Rambo probably made a little more money, but Goonies, for our generation in particular, total classic.
Total
classic.
Find a Generation Xer who hasn't seen Goonies. I'm sure they're out there, but So yeah, again, as much as he would have loved those residuals in Die Hard, at least he gets remembered to be known as, a key supporting player in arguably the greatest action film of all time.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. And thanks again to Robert Davi for being with us. Thanks for your 5-star ratings or kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us all on Twitter. Mr. Davi is at Robert John Davi. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Monday. Join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.